everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Grad Show. I'm Varun. I'm excited to have Karun here to talk about all things data science interviews. And I'll ask him a few questions as well about his experience with it. But I will let Karun introduce himself first, and then we'll get on with the show.
Hey all, excited to join Varun's show here. My name is Karun, as you might already know. Currently working as a data scientist at Walmart. Been working in the field for about 8 years. On the side, I do try to create as much content as possible on LinkedIn about how to get into data science, how to build a long career in data science. Recently, been collabing with BuildML on long form content on Substack and a bit of like video content. And excited to be part of the show. Varun. Thank you.
Awesome. We had a conversation right before this call, and I was talking about how we met in 2024 and had a chat. This is a good excuse to have a chat again, but just live stream for everybody. Whoever
Definitely.
is following us on the live stream, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, enter in the comment section of the platform. If you are joining us live, just say hi, where you're from. If you have any questions, feel free to add those questions in the comments as well. I take them when there is a fit. If not, at the end, we will answer a bunch of questions that we've not been able to cover. But excited to have you. And let's start with a fun game, which I feel gives people like quick answers to hot button topics in the data science field. It's just thumbs up, thumbs down. Very simple.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. Thumbs up or down. You should memorize every statistical formula before you are giving data science interviews.
Uh, Kind of in the middle. So, interview prep, typically, I would say you need to focus on like that 20% of content that gets you, that helps you prep for 80% of interviews. So, in that 20% of content, I would say you don't need to really memorize the formulas. But then, once you know which company you're going to interview for, then formulas might come in handy. For instance, product data science interviews at Meta, you do have rounds where they ask you to work through formulas. My own interview at Amazon, I remember they asked me formulas around loss functions. So generally, no, you don't need to focus on formulas. Once you know which company you're going to interview for, then you need to tailor your prep a little bit according to the company. And at that time, maybe you need to look at formulas.
I remember that brings me a memory of my automotive engineering interviews, and I had to draw like a PV diagram for a gasoline engine. So yeah, you're right. You can be asked fundamental questions that are important to gauge, and it's the Pareto principle that you talked about, by the way, whoever's joining us, it's the 20% effort that takes you 80% of the way there.
Yep.
Then in competitive companies, you still have to cover that 20% that is beyond the 80%, right? That's where this comes in. Awesome. Thumbs up or down. Python is more important than R for data science interviews.
Definitely thumbs up. I think like that's been a long debate whether it's Python or R. I think the debate should have concluded a few years ago. I think Python won out. For interviews, there will be like coding rounds. Coding rounds you can code in almost anything, but a lot of companies do have like pandas focused rounds, or how do you build this ML model, and sometimes getting specific into parameter names and how you sort of optimize. In all of those cases, Python sort of comes across a bit easier to translate. So yeah, I think Python's a bit more important.
Okay, awesome. Debate concluded kind of a thing, right? The next one is behavioral questions matter as much as technical questions in data science interviews.
Yes, definitely yes. So this is true not just for like senior levels. Senior levels, yes, your level is decided purely based on behavioral rounds.
Mm.
I would say yeah, it weighs at least 60% of the reason why you get level to a certain L5, L6, etc. But even at entry level, they look for this thing called culture fit, which is, are you thinking the way the team typically thinks? Are you approaching the problem the way the team typically thinks about a problem? Are you communicating in a manner? In your GitHub, are you writing down everything? Like if you are going for a company like Amazon, having a lot of documentation is really important, and it shows that you're a better culture fit. So there are a lot of those culture fit elements, and being able to know how to communicate during interviews to show that soft skill helps a lot. Like even if your technical skill is a little bit weak, if you're coachable and if you're a culture fit, they will still take you over somebody whose technical skills is very strong, but they can't seem to communicate, or they can't seem to relate to the team that well.
Very interesting. I thought you would go somewhere like a middle, depending on the seniority. But I have seen time and again is that when technical skills are on par across the
Yep.
pool of candidates that you have, it is the behavioral that really separates you. And
Yep.
one nuance that you shared that I want to highlight for people listening is that levels are also decided on how strongly you can communicate your leadership skills, communication skills, teamwork skills, etc. Very cool. We will definitely dig deep into behavioral questions when we go into the deeper part of the interview. By the way, anybody watching, if you have a thumbs up or down question, please put it in the chat right now or in the comment section on the platform that you are coming in from so that I can bring it up before we go into the interview. So the next one, Karun, is domain specific knowledge like finance, healthcare, tech. Domain specific knowledge is more vital than your technical skills. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
It depends a little bit on the role, so I'll go middle here. Um, uh, so there are definitely data science roles that are very tech heavy. If you're thinking something in search and recommendation systems, it's a lot about how you handle scale and engineer really complex systems. Same thing in LLMs and agents. So there, less than the domain, it's about building systems that are robust, reliable, and scalable. In those cases, you can get away with knowing very little of the domain and focus a lot more on engineering and productionalizing these systems. So there are those type of data science roles, um, but uh, for most of the roles, again, I would say maybe 60% of the roles, understanding the business and figuring out how best to solve or improve the business is what a data scientist is typically hired for. So domain does matter. I feel like a lot of entry level candidates focus a lot on the technical aspect. It's a smaller minority of roles that are available, and if you perhaps focus on the business part, perhaps have a business area of expertise, that might help you crack a role in the current market faster.
Let me ask you a follow up for that because I think this is an important topic. You can be somebody who is a data science and big tech, but you are now interested in going into, let's say, automotive or
Mhm.
finance or those different domains that you don't probably have a lot of experience in, but you have really hard technical skills. How can somebody get domain experience quickly before they are interviewing for their target company?
Makes sense. So I think I can do screen share here. Let me just pull up my screen pretty quickly. So let me know when my screen is visible. So the idea is, if in case you don't have experience, the best way to get experience is to work on business relevant problems, and a good place to find business relevant problems is on Kaggle. So if you go to the competition section on Kaggle, let's check out competitions that are completed. There is a reason for this, I'll go into that later. And if I sort by reward, essentially this reward you can use as a proxy for the relevance of the business problem. The higher the reward, the more important it is in terms of business problem. So if I want to, let's say, get into finance,
Hmm.
I can focus on problems that are like highly relevant within finance. So this is like an actual set from Jane Street. It's a pretty popular trading company.
Yeah.
that was like put on Kaggle, and this is like an actual data set that you can work on. And the best thing about these kind of data sets is that, let's say if I want to crack retail, again another one. The best thing about going for closed competitions is that if you go into the discussion section and if you search solution, people actually discussed how they got to like their first place solution. So it prevents that initial inertia that you might have of, oh, how do I even approach this problem? That is solved. Like they don't show you the code, but they actually at least discuss the design. So
Oh,
you
nice.
have a good starting point of how to get started solving this problem.
That is a very cool tip. So whoever's listening, I think this is a golden nugget here, which is if you are going for an industry that you don't have a lot of experience in, a great idea is to go to Kaggle, look at close competitions you mentioned in that
Yes.
particular domain, and they can give you a head start in how to prep for it. That's awesome. I don't think I've heard this before much. I know I'm not in the specifically in the data science bubble, so this might be something that is very obvious. But correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard this before.
A lot of people aren't a fan of Kaggle just because they feel maybe it doesn't simulate the entirety of the data science experience, which I do agree with. A good amount of the data science experience, um, the main thing it doesn't simulate is the fact that these data sets are very clean and very organized. When you typically work in a company, you have to go and find data that will actually help solve the problem. And to sort of simulate that, what I typically say is like, for instance, this problem. This is actually Walmart's own, for a set of stores, for a set of items. They provided the sales, and you have to forecast what the future sales look like. So for this problem, for instance, you can bring in your own data, like for instance, inflation rates, weather. You can go out and get those data additionally, and you can put in your project and say that, hey, I brought in this additional data, and it gave me this much improvement, or I brought in X amount of data, didn't see much improvement. So you can simulate what it is like to work in corporate. But just because Kaggle doesn't provide that out of the box, I mean, like everything packed, doesn't mean you need to disregard Kaggle. I still feel like it's a good place to get started.
Interesting. So you are saying that Kaggle is a little bit rough when it comes to a starting data set, or you're saying the opposite, that it is super clean and it's
It is
not
super
something that
clean. Yeah,
okay,
it's super
understood.
clean when it comes to a starting data set. And typically, we don't start with as clean a data set. Like if you worked in corporate, you would find data to be very unreliable and messy, and it's your
Yeah.
job to make it reliable and make it clean. So that part is maybe a bit missing in Kaggle, but you can simulate that by just going out and grabbing external data sets.
We have to take a detour at data, right? And cleaning data or the quality of data. As a data scientist, what have you found to be the top, let's say, frameworks or fundamental steps that you take to make sure that any data that you have available is useful and effective for the work that you're doing?
I guess the first thing is to just start with like seeing if there's a data dictionary. Each field, what exactly it means, that particular value means, and then just going through the values and figuring out if the values are actually sensible or not. The After that, it's a matter of like, is the data arriving at the time that they say it's arriving? Like, is it actually updating daily at 10 a.m. EST, or are there misses in between? So once you sort of figure out the data actually represents what they're saying it represents, and it's coming in reliably, that means that, okay, I can at least start to look at this data. Then it's about looking at missing values, looking at outliers, looking at distribution, really getting to know the data. And I feel like that is a step a lot of folks kind of fast forward through. um, the main problem being maybe that a lot of courses focus on the deep learning part, and this idea that, hey, you can just throw data into a deep learning model and it will give a good prediction. uh, Typically it doesn't work like that. You need to understand the data and engineer good features from the data. There is this phrase that everybody throws around, but no, but I mean, not a lot of people actually practice, which is garbage in, garbage out. A lot of people feel like they can throw a lot of data at a deep learning model and it will figure out a good prediction. uh, hasn't been the case largely. So get to know the data, engineer good features. I have a couple of blogs on feature engineering and how to approach it that I can share. But yeah, get to know data, engineer features, and then figure out, is it actually possible to build an ML model that solves the business problem, define your metric, define a baseline, start with a simple model, and then think about progressively improving your model. So yeah, there's a little bit of a pipeline work there. This initial part, I think a lot of people skip, and it's like after they build their model and after they start getting their metrics, they realize that, oh, with the data we have, we could have never solved this problem.
I think it also goes back to the objective of the study. And sometimes you need to understand what the output is that you need, what is the
Mhm.
quality of output. Like one example is that I understood what P90 was early in my automotive engineering career, is that you have to kind of take out the outliers completely when you are training a model for
Mhm.
specific use
Yep.
cases. I'll tell you one thing very funny is that the first time I was creating like a neural network uh, of an engine, of an
Mhm.
IC engine, and I had a set of data. I just fed the complete data set to create this model, and I was left with no training points whatsoever to check the quality of the model I was creating. So these are things that you continue to learn
Makes
throughout
sense.
this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah,
And you
I've done like
mentioned
a lot of similar mistakes in the sense that, yeah, going with a deep learning model right off the bat, always a bad move. Not choosing the right metrics. I think for a highly imbalanced data set, which I didn't notice it was an imbalanced data set because I didn't do any data quality. I chose accuracy as a metric and I was getting like 90 plus accuracy. And then I realized, oh, this is an extremely imbalanced data set. Precision is a metric I should have gone for. So yeah, these are like, I think like stages that every data scientist goes through, like understanding the data and then figuring out how to do things.
impressive. Talking about Kaggle, this is a good segue. By the way, we have really good questions come up. A couple of good questions come up about AI impacting data science, and then difference between a junior, mid-level, and senior level roles. And I have those exact questions. I'll bring them in when the right time is.
So,
Another thumbs up, thumbs down. We'll do a couple more, and then we'll go into
mhm.
the actual deeper interview. Take home assignments, right? Talking about Kaggle, take home assignments are a waste of time and a red flag in the interview process. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
uh, I would say it is a little bit of a red flag to me.
Okay,
Um,
nice. I didn't know that that would be your answer. Okay,
for me, it's just not a great way to assess a candidate. I feel like during take home assignments, it's maybe not essentially the candidate's knowledge that comes to light at the end of the presentation. Feel like they get a significant amount of help from a lot of different people, and I feel like it's the idea of a take home assignment is, if you give a person a specific problem, you want to figure out how they think about that problem, and if you give them enough time, how well they can solve that problem. I feel like that can sort of be broken down into two interviews. One is the case study round, where you can actually assess how they think through a problem. It can be like a 45 1 hour round, where they can showcase how they think, and in terms of how they solve specific problems, I feel like a little bit more focused, even though it's not like very popular. Coding rounds, SQL coding rounds, or like giving them a data set and just figuring out how they build models around it, that I feel is like a better use and a better estimation of the candidate's time than take home. Typically they take it, they stick with it for maybe 2 or 3 days. They are spending their entire like 72 hours on a problem, and if in case it doesn't convert in like a role, it feels like a lot of time to waste for a candidate. And in those 7 2 hours, I also feel like they might collaborate with a lot of other people, which may or may not happen in their day to day. In their day to day, I feel like more often than not, you are sort of proactively leading stuff. So, yeah, for me, I just feel case study and coding rounds are a better way to assess a candidate.
Interesting. Final thumbs up, thumbs down is you should ask for a company's data stack in the first interview itself. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Uh, Thumbs down. I think there are better questions to ask. It's not like really a bad question. It depends upon how the interview loop looks like. If the recruiter is sort of informing you of all the rounds, then maybe that's a question you don't need to ask. But I feel like more than the data stack, it's sort of like how clear their expectations are of what they want to do. Like, hey, what is like the teams or the org's goal for the next year? What does success look like for a person in this role in the first 60 days, first 6 months, stuff like that? Like, what do they expect this person to achieve in the first 60 days, first 6 months? That'll give you clarity on what you will be working on. The data stack could be relevant, maybe if it's like a very new startup or something, but otherwise it's more about what they are actually hiring this person to do. That would give you a little bit more information.
It brings me to memory like the question behind the question. This is a framework that I share with my mentees is that any
Mhm.
interview question you are asked, there's always a question behind the question that they are trying to figure out the answer
Makes
for.
sense.
It almost sounds like when you are asking questions to the company, you're trying to get the data behind the data of that. So rather than getting the actual data stack, you're
Yep.
getting the
What are
actual
you
data
actually trying to do?
behind the
Yeah, yeah.
objective. Very cool. All right, that was great. I know I can do I can do thumbs up, thumbs down the entire 1 hour and kind of dig deeper. But I think at this point I want to segue into like asking you questions about data science interviewing. And
Mhm.
before I ask you questions that will help people with a roadmap, behavioral questions, ML questions, questions regarding seniority of the role, those are really important and we'll definitely hit those. I want to ask about your experience. Like you write so much now that the level of clarity that you have with these kinds of things is at a really high level. Did you always start that way when it came to your data science interviews? How did that go?
Oh, definitely not. I think maybe very rarely few people do. There are definitely like people who have a lot of clarity and who are like very introspective. I don't think I was that introspective. For me, my first interviews, I was very focused on what are they asking for and what kind of resources do I need to study to get there. So very little focus on communication. The behaviorals was an afterthought, if
Mhm.
at that. So it is more around, okay, I need to focus completely on data structures and algorithms, because that was like my main hurdle. How do I cross that round? And I need to study as much theory as is humanly possible for machine learning. So those were my only two points of focus. But yeah, as you sort of once you get into a company, I feel like, and once you're part of an interview loop, once you see those evaluation guidelines, that's when maybe things start to click. And once you interview a person, there are these interview debrief sessions. So eventually when you start, you are never the person interviewing a person, you're just a shadow for the actual interviewer. So you just get to sit in and see how people interview and how these debriefs are done and how they walk through the evaluation guidelines. And that's when you understand that, oh, it actually didn't matter if I got the solution for my DSA round. It mattered more if I was taking my interviewer along with how I was solving the problem, how I was even like naming the variables and commenting the code mattered more than maybe just getting like an optimal solution. Uh, so yeah, those kind of things were, so it was like once I was part of the interview loop, that clarity sort of came to me. And that sort of what drove a lot of the content that I wrote thereafter, that hey, it's not just about um, trying to get an optimal solution or solve it as fast as you can. It's more about communicating what you're about to do and making sure the interviewer is coming along with you.
Very cool. Uh, Tell me more about these evaluation guidelines. So you already talked about one, which is how are you communicating the clarity of thought you have through the coding that you are doing? It doesn't matter whether you have the exact solution or not. Were there other evaluation, sorry, guidelines that you thought were very interesting that you had not even thought of before?
Yep. One of the two of the main things that I really liked was a guideline broadly around how structured their thinking was. So if you can actually provide a plan upfront and then follow through on that plan, that comes across very well. The other approach is like you dive straight into the problem and then you adjust as and how the problem sort of presents more tinier problems to you. That apparently isn't looked on well. Like getting straight into the code, getting straight into SQL, getting straight into the design, that isn't good. Laying out a structure first and then following through on that structure, that comes across a lot less chaotic and maybe presents itself a lot better to interviewers. And the second one is considering other alternatives. So whenever you are going for a specific metric, a metric might seem obvious to you, but taking the time to think about, okay, what other metric I have considered, and why am I not using those metrics, or what other model could have I applied here, but why am I not using them right now, or maybe I might use them later on depending upon what the data presents to me. So showing alternative options, that was another one. And then the last one was like preparing for the worst kind of scenarios. So this is like when you're doing DSA, what are the edge cases that can come? What if this kind of input comes? Same thing in ML modeling. What happens if my upstream data suddenly breaks? What How do I handle my model? Or what happens if my feature suddenly starts to drift? How do I handle my model? So thinking about all these negative scenarios, I guess, kind of presents its well in interviews also. So those three, they're not written this way, but they are somewhat baked into like eval guidelines.
Really interesting. So let me paraphrase because
Sure.
you mentioned something really good, which is one, you clarity of thought while doing the work.
Mhm.
The second was clarity of thought upfront,
Mhm.
like setting the stage and then executing the stage.
Yep.
It almost felt like the boxing analogy, right? The 1-2 punch. Like the one punch is setting up the stage, and the knockout punch is the one where you kind of deliver on setting up
Yep,
the stage.
definitely. Yeah. The plan and execute is sort of like within corporate, that is, it's not just a nice to have, it's a required. You have to
Mhm.
show your plan first and then only execute. You can't just execute because you have to take other people along with you. Only with a number of people along with you can you have the kind of impact you need to have in a corporate setting.
Absolutely. Great point. Basically, you want to show that you are somebody that can hit the ground running when you are coming into the company.
Yep.
Very cool. I want to ask you one thing, which is you talked about DSA a couple of times now. Was there something in this entire thing of data science interviews? Was there a part of your technical skills or even behavioral skills that you found difficult to learn and execute on?
Yeah, definitely. DSA is is that answer. Data structures and algorithms. I know a lot of people are opposed to the idea of asking data structures and algorithms questions in interviews. I I'm sort of on the fence for it. If there is a better solution out there, I would definitely be the first to adopt it. But for me, to test a candidate's problem solving in 45 minutes, where both my load as an interviewer is very low because DSA is like fairly structured. I can understand how they're solving problems because it's just pseudo code. I don't need to understand. I don't need to have background on, like, me as a recommendation systems or LLM expert. I don't need to know about CV. So if they're talking about CV, I could never relate. But DSA is just pseudo code. It's if else loops and everything. So it's something that I can understand. We are on the same playing ground. So very little interview load for me as an interviewer. And for them, they are aware of the fact that, hey, it's gonna be a DSA round. Prep for this round. Come with your best foot forward. So DSA is definitely something that is hard to prep for. It takes time. I definitely am not one of those people who advise that, hey, prep for DSA like one question every day for months on end. No, you are going to burn yourself out because it's so far from your day to day as a data scientist. It's not, unless it's coding is something that you actually enjoy, especially competitive coding. It's something that's very hard to do every day. So I would say that, hey, 30 days before you're going to start interviewing, or before you start 30 days before you start interviewing, or before you're planning to apply, that's when you should start DSA. Lead code blind 75 is a great list. We've checked like with multiple companies, and we know that they ask questions around arrays, strings, dynamic programming. Neat Code is a beautiful channel where he explains all these concepts very clearly. There are common patterns in arrays, strings, and DP that you should know and that you should be learning. And it can get a little bit more with like learning those patterns and practicing. There is structure, or there is a method to the madness that is DSA. So make sure you invest time to figure out what that method is so that you don't go mad.
I want to get into the brain of the company and the interviewing panel. If DSA is a bit far from what you actually do day to day in
Mhm.
your job, as your role and as in the function, why do they ask these questions? The reason I'm asking you this question is maybe by understanding the why, somebody can then develop a plan around how to accomplish that why.
Makes sense. So problem solving is what's at the heart of data structures and algorithms rounds. And if you are very good at problem solving, it translates very well, because almost all of data science is just being able to solve different problems that come up. So and that's why even when you have DSA rounds, it's not going to be lead. So lead code has three levels: easy, medium, hard. It's not going to be hard questions. It's going to be medium questions. So these are questions that with like 30 days of prep, you can get somewhat a good handle on. And I've consistently seen people who are good coders, they do tend to be good data scientists as well. Like, people who are good data scientists don't need to be good coders, but people who are good coders, at least technically, they do tend to be good data scientists.
Hmm. So it is all about problem solving. It's about
Yep,
nimbleness. It's about showcasing your top performance.
exactly. Yep.
And what it sounds like is that if you are able to take the advice that you shared earlier, which is share your clarity of thought, share how you are programming everything, planning everything. If you are able to do that in DSA interviews, even if you don't get the solution correctly,
Mhm.
that will still earn you some points in this equation. Do I say that
Definitely.
correctly?
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
And it's because, like, for instance, during one of the interviews, there was a candidate who clearly knew the solution of the problem, and which is like why he solved it pretty fast, as opposed to a candidate who, uh, to us at least, it felt like he didn't know the solution of the problem. He went with a brute force solution first, and then he worked it out and found he wasn't able to code the entire solution out, but he got to like the pseudocode portion by the end of the interview. And just because of the way that he communicated and he translated things across, both of them made it to the next round. And the other person, the one who communicated clearly, actually went through till the final. I think he got in. I wasn't there till the final rounds, but yeah, the other guy went further than the one who knew the answer. So don't get disheartened. Like when, especially in DSA, a lot of people feel like if I haven't seen this problem before, I won't be able to solve it in the interview. I am that person, but I'm telling you again and again, don't get disheartened. Get to a non-optimal solution. Communicate, talk, think out loud what different scenarios you're trying to trying to assess to figure it out, and don't like I've had like people who I can visually see them give up during the interview. Don't do that. Like keep engaged, keep trying, and just keep communicating. And eventually, if you talk it out enough, your interviewer will also start to give you hints. So just communicate to the point that they give you hints, and then use those hints to move along further. So don't get disheartened is the main thing.
Very cool. So I was going to ask you, can they ask questions? And it almost
Yep.
sounds like they can, in a way, indirectly at least. They can by sharing their thought process, sharing where they are getting stuck, probably. That's also a way to kind of get some nudges from the
Yep.
interviewing
So it's
process.
like they give like I could do it option A like this, option B like this, option C like this, option D like this, and the interviewer will be like, yeah, the option C sounds interesting. Let's
Hmm.
look into that a bit more, and that's sort of your direction to okay, yeah, that might be the right path. So
Hmm.
just keep throwing out things and see what sticks, sort of.
Very cool. There are so many good questions already coming in the chat, and I definitely like one of them is I'll take one very quickly because I do want to go to the roadmap pretty soon. But do all companies have DSA rounds?
No, no. Again, data science is divided into product data science and applied data science. Product data science rounds almost never do they have like DSA rounds. They typically focus a little bit more on SQL and product sense. Applied data science, AI engineering, those are the roles that you're going to see more DSA rounds, because they have to put models into production. So the code they write has to be good. That's why typically they have DSA rounds. And even in applied data science, do all companies have DSA rounds? No, not necessarily. Most of the FANG companies do, but a lot of the startups prefer to go their own route as well.
Interesting. How can somebody who is an introvert, maybe, or somebody who has never really communicated that code in the past, how can they improve their communication through this process? Because it sounds like communication is a big part of the technical interviewing.
Makes sense. So I'm an introvert myself. So for me, as an introvert, the biggest hurdle for me is it's hard to make small talk. But if you give me like a topic, then I can sort of talk about it fairly well. So your interviews, again, just focus on what you know and talking about that. And in terms of bringing structure, bringing that alternative thinking, that negative scenario handling, all of those things, your best bet is to join a mock interview group where you just pair up and do mock interviews for one another. And through that, that's how you prepare. Like most of my mentees do like 30 plus mock interviews when they're uh, like actively interviewing for roles. So find a mock interview group. Plug would be like Buildml has a chat where you can just hey, I'm looking for mock interviews for DSA or case studies. You can just drop a chat message there. You'll find somebody who will say that hey, I'm also doing for this, and you can just team up and do mock interviews with one another.
I appreciate you plugging that because that's a resource that people can use, and we want to make
Yep.
sure that we give resource. I think without further ado, let's get into the roadmap right now. I know we went into a lot of thumbs up and down, and you've already shared a lot of deep stuff. Give me a roadmap. Somebody who's preparing for data science interviews. If you want, you can pick the avatar and then talk to me about how they should prepare for it.
Got it. So if you are preparing for interviews, then I'm assuming you already have a callback. You have like interviews lined up. So at this point, the 20% that will cover maybe like 80% of companies. That 20% is going to be a little bit different for product data science, a little bit different for applied data science. I'll focus on applied data science first, just because that's what I do and it's a little bit more what I'm familiar with. So DSA, you can't skip on it. 30 days. Just tell yourself it's just 30 days and push yourself through it. Lead Code Blind 75 is sort of like the main resource. Maybe I'll just share my screen and walk through a few
Yeah,
things if that's okay.
absolutely.
Um, so the first one is sort of Lead Code Blind 75. It's a
Karun,
list.
can you zoom in a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect.
So this is a list of like 75 questions that
Okay.
are very commonly asked in companies. The key sections to focus on is arrays, dynamic programming, and strings. These are sort of like the most commonly asked topic. And if in case you need solutions, this YouTube channel called Need Code has solutions for each of those questions. He explains it in a very simple manner, starting with what the non-optimal or brute force solution is and how you work yourself up to like an optimal solution. There are like a few other things that I would recommend in DSA, which is figuring out what patterns. So arrays have certain patterns, and it's good to understand what those patterns are and prepare according to those patterns. Similarly, dynamic programming, for instance, has like five key patterns. Just knowing these patterns and preparing like one or two questions on each pattern is going to be really helpful. So this is just a way of like I mentioned, providing method to the madness. It'll
Mhm.
make it feel like, hey, there isn't 3,000 problems in lead code that I need to do. It'll
Mhm.
try to cut it down to maybe like 60, 70 problems that if you do, probably you'll get at least you'll at least be able to move forward during the interviews to a certain point. So lead code is going to be the first thing that you need to focus on. The next one is probability and stats. Shout out to Emma Ding. She's a great content creator on YouTube. She covers pretty much all the base probability concepts you need to know. So this is like hypothesis testing and A/B testing. Those would be the two key cornerstones. Just understanding those will sort of make sure that any theoretical questions related to how would you know if this feature rollout is going to have impact, how do you know if this feature can be used for this model, what how do you understand if these two are actually distinct behaviors, stuff like that. Those questions, your probability and stats would help. And there is like a free course on Udacity. It's sort of like taught by folks from like Google. uh, you can go through it and it'll cover pretty much everything you need to know for A/B testing.
Mm.
The next is SQL again. Lead code has like this set of 50 questions. Just going through these 50, I think suffices. Typically, SQL isn't something that a lot of people struggle with. It's more like sometimes folks ask follow-up questions from SQL, like, okay, I know you coded out this metric in this manner, but now let's apply this metric to this particular situation and see if it would make sense to measure this metric from a product impact standpoint. This typically happens in Facebook product data science interview questions. But the key thing, SQL, in terms of from a technical lens, just the SQL 50 roadmap will cover pretty much all the concepts that you need to know. And then machine learning, I would again, just because I never found a good resource, everything I know sort of like would come. I've created like this 7-part series. Oh, sorry, 9-part series, which covers pretty much all the models that will come: SVM, K-means, KNN, XGBoost, all all of the most commonly asked models, and each of those have commonly asked questions. So that would be your best bet to prepare for machine learning. Same thing with case studies. I was never able to find a good resource for case studies, so we have like um, resources specifically dedicated to case studies, what framework you should use, and even like mock case study rounds that you can like read through and practice, which will help. I think we did one for Instagram. Let me just see if I can pull it up. Yep. So this is like a actual mock case study, the interviewer question, the interview response, and like follow-up questions here and there. And I have a few asides just in case people aren't familiar with the concept. They can dive deep into it and they can understand that concept a little bit more. So this is like a proper mock interview essentially.
I mean, my head is overwhelmed right now. So the next obvious question here is, how would you divide your day? Like, let's take two case scenarios, like, or let's take one scenario, which is somebody who's already in a job, has a really demanding job. They may be able to give 10 hours over the whole week, a lot of time on the weekend. How would you divide those 10 hours between what you shared here with us?
Awesome question. So I would say an hour a day for lead code, and an hour a day just to understand the ML theory. That should suffice. I would say Monday to Friday. So I know that already hit 10 hours, but maybe you can skip the hour a day on theory. Maybe on I don't know, like you can do it 2 days, Monday to Friday. So lead code, I would say do it continuously, an hour a day, Monday to Friday. And ML theory, let's say you hit 1 hour on Monday, 1 hour on Tuesday. um, Stats and SQL are something that if you dedicate, for instance, statistics, if you dedicate 2 hours continuously, A/B testing is done. Make notes, just review it before your interview. Same thing, hypothesis testing, the MRDing playlist, 2 hours on a weekend, dedicated, make notes, you're done. SQL, same thing, 2 hours on a weekend, dedicated, make notes, you're done. These notes you can just refer to before your interview. So once these three are knocked off, then you just need to every day 1 hour lead code, 1 hour ML. Just keep at that, and that will sort of make sure that you're in a good spot for your interviews. Now, when you land a company specific interview round, that's when you can make adjustments to these. Like, for instance, if you're going for product data science interviews at Meta, you might want to push up your SQL prep and your specifically your stats prep, just because product data science interviews at Meta tend to get a little bit heavy on stats. They ask you your equations and formulas, and they have like two SQL rounds where they ask you a lot of SQL questions, and from there they go into your product sense / case study rounds.
Is there a resource, Karun, where you can understand the nuances between what is heavily favored in one company over the other?
Yes, so try Exponent and Interview Query are great resources. So they do have interview guides. So let me just maybe just data science interview guide. Let me just do Meta. Yep. So Exponent has these Meta specific interview guides. So they'll walk you through like technical screen, SQL, product sense. But I would say, especially fan companies, their recruiters are really good in the sense that they really walk you through what the rounds look like. So the more popular companies, I would say, don't worry too much. Your recruiter will take really good care of you. If you get a call back, you would have like very little confusion about what your rounds are going to look like. because they want to make sure you present your best effort as well. It's going to be the smaller companies that you might have a little bit of a hard time with. There, the recruiters may not be what I say, like in-house recruiters, so they may not be aware of the process either. So your best bet is to reach out to folks on LinkedIn and figure out what the process looks like, which is also a good reason why you should be using those connection requests on LinkedIn and sending out connection requests.
So if we start about talking LinkedIn connection requests, how to apply, that's just going to be another 2 hour session that you and I both can talk about. But I think that a really good nuance here that I want to cover is in this question here, which is how should we prepare for interviews for senior level roles? Like how is the process different for entry, mid level? I would add another level there, Karun, which is staff engineers. Like, give me like a breakdown of what's different there.
I think the interview loops are somewhat similar in the sense that they still have like the table stakes coding round. It's more that the people involved in the interview loop are director level, senior director level, and the kind of questions they ask get a little bit more nuanced, especially in the case study round. um, for instance, let's say entry mid level, the case study rounds is a little bit more focused on um, how to actually build this out. How do you uh, go through with metric design, experimenting with your models, and putting it out into production? Whereas your senior level roles, you focus a lot more on what problem are you solving for the business, and there are a lot more questions around what about this scenario in the business, what about this scenario in the business, and you try and as a good candidate you try and get as much nuance for the business problem as possible upfront, and then that sort of takes you through to the remaining, which is like metric model and all of that. And you get like a little bit offhand, I guess, questions like what happens if you have very common questions like difficult teammates, tight deadlines, those kind of things. Your directors would sort of pose to you, and more questions around, because at I guess senior and staff level, it's not just about executing, it's about finding the right problems to solve and solving those problems, because nobody in the company is going to really help you solve business problems. Like you're going to have a lot of pushback whenever you're trying to change, especially systems that have been around for 20 to 30 years. Whatever change you make is going to influence somebody else's some other system and they're going to push back. So it's a lot about how you as a person approaches those conversations, uh, and for a lack of a less cliched word, how you negotiate those conversations and try and get to a middle ground. So they ask questions that feel very abstract, but if you have been through those situations, you will be able to give like a clear framework, like, hey, okay, what happens if the question feels very abstract when you hear it the first time. What happens if this team has a metric that you're putting downward pressure on? How do you approach it? So if you have never been through that situation before, it feels like a very abstract question, and a simple response, you would give something simple, right? I mean, I would talk to them, figure out a middle ground, something like that. But if you've been through it, you know it's a lot more about not just talking to the team, but talking to other teams, and then moving up, and then trying to figure out how to influence where you can't influence. So, yeah, if you've been through it, those conversations sort of go deeper, I guess.
I want to take a moment to share something with everybody watching is that you can understand the question behind the question, like how to work with difficult colleagues or how to make sure that you can handle differing priorities. You have to understand the question behind the question. Is so, for example, in difficult conversations or difficult colleagues. They are trying to understand how you deal with conflict, how you arrive to a solution, how do you influence the decision.
Mhm.
You can use exactly what Karun mentioned here, which is you can't really go and talk to that person all the time and find a solution. Sometimes there's a impasse that you can't really solve for. What do you do then? And the technique that you mentioned about going sideways, getting more advocates on board, getting more feedback so that you are coming up with an objective solution as well, and then going up, right? You sometimes need to go up and make sure that you there's alignment. The reason why I'm sharing this is that behavioral part of interviewing is important, as you have likely mentioned at the top as well. How can people prepare for the behavioral part of interviewing?
Yep, yep. And I want to really emphasize on that because, um, like the first time I got into corporate setting as a software engineer, I felt like maybe a little bit of my arrogant side felt like I could actually code better than like some of my seniors. And I couldn't understand why my seniors were my seniors. But when the project got difficult, when conversations got difficult, when deadlines were there, the way that they approached it in a calm, composed manner helped me realize why my seniors were my seniors. So um, after a point, I really again want to emphasize you need a certain amount of technical skills. But after a certain point, it is the behavioral skills that get a project to completion. So I know a lot of people like indexing on those technical skills significantly, and it can become really helpful if you become sort of like that top 5% of like technically proficient person that everybody comes to. That can be a route to go. But if you feel like even though you're better than maybe a few other people technically, but you aren't there yet for some reason, I would say maybe check on the behavioral part a little bit. See if you are able to not really win conversations, but get the outcome that you desire. Less about winning, but getting to the outcome that you desire, I guess.
It's very cool you say that initial part about being young and being cocky about,
Yeah.
your skills. I have been on both sides of the equation. I've been on the equation where I was arrogant. I've been on the equation where somebody was arrogant, and I'm like, okay, I know you. I have been in your shoes. I know how you feel right now, but there's more to it than what you can see. It's not just a technical problem. There's business problems. There are people expectation. There are internal customers. There are external customers. You have to take into
Yep.
consideration.
Yep.
I
And
will say something that behavioral is a part where I have helped a lot of people, even data scientists. There's a data scientist at Amazon who I worked with, and one thing I've noticed is that whenever it comes to behavioral, because technical is so specific, coding is specific, syntax is specific, when people move to behavioral, they become extremely high level. They
mhm,
kind of are on the surface of the problem that they are talking about. I would say change that. Like, think about behavioral equally as your technical interviewing. Think about the syntax, think about the specifics. So, sure, use the star method to give your situational answers, but make sure you're still giving really specific, what I call bones, not just muscle, which is a story. Give bones as well. This is the system we used. Here are the results, the technical metrics, the business metrics. You want to really share the nitty gritty as well. So don't think just because it is behavioral, it means your answer needs to be surface level. That's one of the biggest common mistakes that I see out there.
yep, yep. Yeah, and it's something like I guess similar veins. I suggest to the mentees that hey, take a avatar of a situation, just like we would like a technical problem, and then work through it. Like okay, this kind of conflict where this person isn't just listening to you. So okay, in that particular situation, I would do X, Y, Z. Okay, the person is listening. It's just that their leadership is asking them to push up this metric and our model is pushing down this metric, but they are willing to get to a middle ground. Okay, in that situation what would you do? Like you have a partner willing to work with you, that would be a completely different situation than the other one where they aren't willing to work with you. So two different so just work through those situations in behavioral. You can approach it just like you would like a modeling problem, I guess.
And make sure you share the result,
Yeah.
like what was the KPI. And even if your question was not about what the KPI was or what the business impact was, share that, because ultimately whatever problem you have tried to solve or whatever leadership you've shown along the way, it was to solve a business problem.
Mhm.
It wasn't in a vacuum, so make sure that you deliver that as well. I'll move back to asking you questions, and I'll
Sure.
take questions from the chat now, which is, how is AI impacting data science interviews, Karan?
So I know there is a lot of news around people or companies allowing coding sort of like partners or pair programming partners in interviews. I haven't seen it actually happen, at least until now, and I have like had a few mentees even interview recently with fan companies, including like the fan company who said that they're allowing it. But yeah, they said that no, it wasn't the case. It was still like a doc, and they went through that. I would say, at least in the coding rounds, not much change. It's more not, at least not in the way that we expect. It's more around the questions that are being asked. I guess there's a little bit of hype around LLMs and agents, and rightfully so. Whoever breaks or figures out this technology will have acquire a huge amount of the consumer base, and it's not something like getting that consumer base is not an easy thing to do. And if you are the first to market, it's going to be a huge shift, or a huge amount. There's a huge amount of money to make, basically, if you're the first to market. So there is a lot of hype in LLMs and agents, and because of that, if you are going into a data science, applied data science interview where the JD had LLMs agents mentioned, you will be asked questions. I like to break those questions into sort of three areas of expertise. One is sort of like the shallow area of expertise, where most of the questions will be around because around evals, because those companies are typically just making calls to OpenAI or using some model via GCP, Amazon, whatever, and they just need to figure out what kind of prompts, what kind of tools to use to get their agent to perform a certain way, or get their LLM to give a certain output. So most of the questions are around evals and flywheels around improving. The next level is RAG and context engineering, where it's a little bit more like we have proprietary information. We want the model to learn that information and answer accordingly, or we need the agent to understand this information and act accordingly. So that is sort of the next level. And then the next deeper level sort of like splits off into two, where you're either doing fine tuning on LLMs to fundamentally change the behavior, or you're building agents and you're going into agentic system design and guardrails around agents, and trying to figure out how to explain how these models make the decisions they actually make, and they don't make any kind of adverse decisions. So yeah, it's definitely like a interesting space, a lot of like new things to learn, and yeah, hopefully it pans out. Oh, I think I lost audio. My bad.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was a rookie mistake on my
Okay.
part. I think it takes me back to the episode that I did with Hari Prasad, and he talked about these four levels of AI and how you can showcase your, let's say, technical abilities through these four levels. Level one is simple prompting with a chatbot. All of us know how to do that. The second level is RAG with a chatbot, right? So you're feeding proprietary information, so you're getting results. A lot of us do that as well. Like we give our resumes, we give our portfolios, and that's our internal
Mhm.
RAG or private data. The next version is agentic AI, and the version above that is to have AI check the output of the LLM that you've created, right? That's and when he said that, it almost made me feel like inception or something of that kind, right? It's a
Yeah,
dream
definitely.
inside a dream inside a dream. So I think that is another good framework to kind of think about how you can showcase improved AI skills based on those levels.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. Next question is one expected to build models from scratch, or more part is spent on monitoring the models in production? And how do you do that? What problems to come up when the model is already in production?
Got it. So it depends a little bit on how mature the team is. So if your team is new, if they're new to data science, maybe they don't have any models in production. So during those times, a good amount of your team might be involved in building models out and proving them, building POCs and proving them. But most mature teams, you might find yourself just trying to improve models and make sure those models that are already out in production are working as expected. I'll come to the improvement part later because it wasn't necessarily asked in the question. I'll focus on the monitoring part right now. So monitoring models is sort of split into two. One is making sure whatever business metrics or business impact that you want to have, whether it be conversion on your e-commerce site, whether it be making sure the false positive rate on your fraud detection model isn't increasing a certain amount. So all those business metrics you're monitoring and making sure that there is no sort of like anomalous increases, decreases in those models. And if there is, then immediately being able to tie those anomalies to your model logs and your input, that pipeline being built out is really important. The other is monitoring on your input data, so everything to do with feature drift, feature quality, all of those things, just to make sure whatever data that you're supplying to your model is uh, the distribution is essentially isn't drifting too much. So those would be the two key elements. uh, Apart from that, just having a few other tools around um, explainability is sort of like key. Essentially, a lot of your business will come to you and ask questions like that. Ask questions like, "Hey, this particular thing happened. Why did the model react this way?" You building out a pipeline that you can run immediately to get those explainable answers is good. That is sort of part of maintaining a model in production. So yeah, those are like some of the key elements about monitoring and maintaining a part in production. If in case you want to get into the depths of it, good technology, good tech stack to study is Docker. Airflow is like the Docker is for containerization. That's sort of like a go-to in the market. For orchestration, Airflow is a good orchestration tool. And any cloud platform getting to understand compute, storage, and serving. So, for instance, taking an example of GCP, compute would be around Dataproc, just understanding that. Storage would be around GCS, BigQuery, understanding those technologies, and serving could again be like Dataproc, or like in AWS, you have like something called SageMaker pipelines for serving and orchestration as well. So yeah, just understanding a few of those technologies, understanding one cloud platform would help you in getting um, hit the ground running on monitoring part. If in case you want to know about like improving the model part, just drop that question in and we can take it. Oh, I think I lost audio yet.
I'm trying to mute myself because my girls are making some noise in the background.
No
I don't
issues,
know
no
how much
issues.
you guys are hearing it or not, but that's why I was muting myself. Very quickly, because I think we have many questions to go. So almost like a rapid fire is, does it make sense to ask this question in an interview setting as well? Like, for example, there is a case study, and you can ask, oh, is there an existing model that we will be working with, or do we have to create a model from scratch? Is that a good question to ask, or it is a mid or a not necessary question to ask?
Um, Maybe a mid question, just because. a lot of teams, unless they are like very confident that you are going to be given an offer, they don't really like to talk about the work that they're doing because it's maybe considered proprietary, and interviewers don't really feel like they I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, the interviewee deserves to know that. So they keep a lot of things close to the cuff. They give you a little bit more broad information about what goals we have, and what we would expect you to solve in the first 60 days. Like, hey, we have this churn prediction problem, and that's what we want you to solve. Or we have this recommendation solution for a particular customer experience that we want to improve, and within the first 60 days we want to see you draw up a basic do a lit review and figure out like a good baseline and start a model for those. So those could be like things that you could hear, but yeah, people keep it a little bit generic because it's all company specific.
I understand. I think I was asking more from the perspective of whether your answer will change based on like the assumption that you're making. So you can say, okay, can I make the assumption that there is a model already, or should I make the assumption that there is a model that we need to create from scratch? And that gives you a different pipeline.
Got it. Yeah, in that case, yes, it's a good question to ask the interviewer, just to see what aspect of your ability they want to actually test on it. It's fine to ask. Yeah.
And also, it gives a credibility marker to that person, right? That they were
Yep.
thoughtful enough to ask that question in the first place. It gives them like a internal check mark that, okay, they are thinking deeply about this problem.
Yep. Especially during case studies, it's good to ask them that, hey, okay, I can dive deep into feature engineering, or I can talk about metrics. Which one do you want me to focus on? That's good to ask because interviewers might have like a criteria that they're trying to assess you on. So it's always good to ask those questions. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Let's let's go through this. Our data scientist interviews mostly about machine learning.
It depends. Product data science interviews are more about SQL, product sense, and metric design. Applied data science interviews, yes, it's a bit more. It's mostly about machine learning.
Awesome. For DS roles, how deep data engineering basics are required? Is there an overlap of skills between DS and DE roles?
Typically, no. If a company is like a startup or a new company, then maybe you are expected to handle DS and DE. But for most mid-sized companies, 1,000 plus employees and upwards, they sort of split those roles out. DE is a little bit more engineering related. You focus a lot more on ETL pipelines and building scalable systems. Data science, depending upon whether it's product data science, applied data science, a little bit different skill set assist. So again, check the company size, talk to your recruiter, talk to other people on LinkedIn. You'll have a better idea from there.
Awesome. Succinct and perfect. Some companies are throwing almost all the AI keywords in their job description. Job descriptions is another topic, and how people can slack their way through the job descriptions. What is the suggested tech stack? Because it's not quite possible to learn everything.
Got it. So if it's about getting a call back, I do tell my mentees to sort of like optimize their resume based on like some keywords, whatever tools, technologies you are familiar with. If that's there in the JD, it's a good idea to have like a skill section and mention those. It doesn't hurt. I don't believe in the fact that ATS is like it's like this oracle that chooses who to interview with. I feel like it's more of like a bar. If you cross the bar, you have a chance at an interview. So it's good to add those keywords in your skill section. From an interview preparation standpoint, if you got a call back, there is something in your resume that they liked. So just focus on your resume and prep for all the projects in your resume. Don't try and read the JD and try and estimate what they will ask. Like whatever you've done in your resume, whatever you've built in your resume, just focus on those things.
Yeah, you don't build a resume for the ATS. You
Yep.
build a resume for a job position at a particular type of company and with the skills that you have and really sharing the impact. If you do that, you'll clear ATS.
Yep.
Unless you are like really going after roles that you don't have a match for, then you won't clear ATS, even if you put even if you put all the keywords from the JD on your resume with a white ink so that nobody can see and you get a better relevance score, as soon as a person is reading the resume, you're not going to make it to the interview. The objective is not to clear the ATS, it's to get interviews with your resume. So I'm really glad that you said that, and really like the nuance that, okay, if you got the interview and you mentioned some particular keywords that are AI related, make sure that you can back yourself up using those skills. Very nice. I think we have one more. If there is any other questions that people want to ask, please do so in the next minute or so. I think we can take a couple more. Here's another question, Karun, which is, how do you convert model in evaluation to business impact? Someone who understands metrics like accuracy, precision, recall, but when I read numbers on cost savings or revenue, I wonder how you do that. Nice
Got
one.
it. Yeah, this is a good question. The problem is, as data scientists, sometimes we aren't curious of how we impact business. So oftentimes we forget to ask, like, hey, when this model is going to be put out in production, what is it actually going to do? So I know, like, oftentimes maybe we're working on POCs that don't go into production. In those cases, maybe it might not be uh, a good bullet to put on your resume in terms of showing business impact. Maybe let me just take a step backward. So if your model was put in production, it's gonna impact business in some way, shape, or form. Your best bet is to, if you don't know the exact metrics, if you haven't done an A/B test, and if you haven't measured a specific business metric is going up, down, whatever, if you haven't done that, then your best bet at this point is going to be making a conservative estimate of what kind of impact it had on business. Now, if this isn't something that you put in production, if it's a POC or if it's a personal project that you're doing, then rather than trying to aim for business impact, build a baseline solution, a non-ML baseline solution, and try and showcase improve how much this model improves on that baseline. Or if it's on an ML problem that's very common, like for instance, the Kaggle problems that we discussed, H&M recommendation system. It's a very popular data set. A lot of people have worked on that problem. There is a certain metric and there is a certain level people have gotten with that metric. If you say things like, I got near SOTA being state of the art performance with my model, then the hiring manager will immediately relate that, hey, this is a quality product that he's built out. He reached SOTA level performance. So compare your solution to what is state of the art. So that could be another way to showcase that what you have done is high quality work. If business impact can't be shown, best bet is to show business impact.
Yeah, there is a technical metric and there's a business metric. Always show the business metric if possible, because that's how companies make decisions. Companies
Yep.
don't make decisions purely on technical metrics. They are trying to solve for either increased revenue, new opportunities, or lowering costs. So you definitely have to figure out a business metric if you can. When you are working, it's great to just ask questions to people that who know this answer or know are tracking it. Ask them if they have shared any of these informations to higher level stakeholders, and if they can send you a screenshot or something to get an understanding of where your impact is. Now, if you're out of the organization, maybe you're working for a new one and you're thinking about how to represent your old data, sometimes you can work with AI to find out, okay, what would be, here's a scope, here's a slight scope of where the type of problem that I was trying to solve. What do you think would be an impact? And you can clearly state in the interview that I did not have complete information, but this is how I came to an hypothesis of how this solved this level of a business problem. So
Yep.
that is completely okay, because again, nobody is going to go check your exact impact at the past company. They can't really, but the hypothesis is important. The intention of getting to the business is important.
Yep.
Awesome. One final one here, which is, can you elaborate on how you start with a baseline?
Sure. So it depends again on the ML formulation. So for instance, a forecasting problem, you can just take whatever the previous value was and say that that's going to be the value tomorrow. That's a simple non-ML baseline. For recommendation systems, whatever is the top 10 most popular things, I'm going to recommend that. Netflix actually does that, the top 10 movies in your area, and that's actually a really good recommendation. It's especially in Texas, it's a very hard baseline to beat also. So depending upon your ML formulation, there are a lot of non-ML baselines. If you're looking for what is state of the art in the field, for instance, within M5, within forecasting, there is what we call a benchmark data set. For instance, for instance, for forecasting, there are these competitions that are called M series competitions. So again, you can just ask ChatGPT about this, like what is the benchmark in this particular domain, and it will tell you what the benchmark is and where to find what the current SOTA metrics on it is. But just to give a bit of background for forecasting, there are these competitions called M series competitions. They're held every year. M5 was, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So you can just find what the benchmark data set is. It's open source, free to download. You can figure out what the SOTA is. There's going to be a paper. Nowadays, there are solutions where if you just take the paper, put it into an AI tool, it will spit out the Google Colab version of the code. So that's a good place to start with. That hey, this is the SOTA implementation, and then you can figure out how to get near to SOTA, or maybe even beat it. If you beat it, even better.
Very cool. And probably answers this question also. Correct me if I'm wrong. The question is, can you give an example if I'm just working on a data set from Kaggle, how to check for metrics or how to check for the SOTA, as you mentioned? Is the answer similar?
Yes, so in Kaggle, there is going to be a leaderboard. So you can just check the leaderboard and you would be able to see it. Let me just pull up a Kaggle screen. So let's say M5 forecasting. You can just go to the leaderboard and you can see the score right here. So that's going to be, so for this particular metric, they got a max score of zero point 0.5. That is like number one solution. If you can beat that, if you can get close to that, yours is like a near SOTA solution on this M5 benchmark dataset.
Karun, if people are giving solutions to problems on Kaggle, aren't they giving a solution which is SOTA or they are giving, like, yeah, tell me about that.
So M5 was about, I think, 6 years ago. People have improved on it now. Like since the competition is closed, you can't see like the newer solutions. So this was maybe SOTA in, I mean, like state of the art in 2020. It's not anymore. So now you can use like, there are just like language models, there are now foundational models for time series. They treat time series data like a language and try to predict what's going to happen next. So you can use those models now and get pretty good score about this. So this isn't SOTA anymore. If you just search M5 forecasting, uh, you will find papers that will now become SOTA. So again, just chat GPT this and you'll be able to find what the SOTA right now on this M5 forecasting benchmark dataset is.
This is so interesting. Honestly, just helping people with their job search has given me an understanding of different fields that almost felt like I was learning Greek like 2 years back or 3 years back. But this is really helpful. And by the way, one more acronym that you've been using that people may not know, a POC is proof of concept in this case. I think this is great. I think what we have covered so far. I do want to spend like 2 or 3 minutes in the very end asking you some questions to know more about Karun outside of the data
Sure.
science ML version. But right now, I want to take a moment to ask you like, we've covered a lot of ground in this chat. Is there something that we didn't cover that you want to share with people about data science interviews and how to be good at that?
I think the main thing is just having very similar to, I guess, how you work in corporate. Just have a plan first and then execute on that plan. Don't be stressed out about the fact that, oh, data science interviews asks questions related to anything in machine learning, and machine learning is such a broad topic. How do I even begin to study this? Don't approach it in that manner. Read different guides. A lot of people have a lot of resources. If you need one specific resource, build ML, we work to put everything in one place. So understand, have a roadmap, and then just execute on that roadmap. Yes, there will be things that you don't know. It's okay, you don't need to know everything. Just focus on that 20%, which will cover like 80% of interviews. And yeah, that's sort of the key thing. Just execute on the plan, don't be too stressed.
I would second build ML. So anybody who's watching this and has loved what Karun has to share, he writes daily on LinkedIn. 90% of the times I like the posts without even understanding what the hell Karun is talking about. But obviously, from time to time, I do understand what he's trying to do and try to add my flavor to it. So I highly recommend following Karun on LinkedIn as well as
Thank
Build
you.
ML. Anything you want to share, like promote as a resource that you created that people will get benefit from?
For sure. So I think the key one that we've been getting a lot of positive feedback from is a book that I worked with Nirmal. Nirmal is another content creator. He's senior data scientist at Microsoft. We both wrote a book which covers about 100 questions that you can get asked from ML foundations. So it's going to cover your most common models, linear regression, list regression, k-means, knn, support vector machines, and decision trees. So these are the foundational questions that you get asked from. And because we know that we don't start prepping till we have an interview in place, we wanted to make sure that, hey, we don't give like 500 or 1,000 questions. We wanted a resource that you can actually finish in 2 or 3 days, because that's how we prepped. That's why we stuck to the 100 most common questions that we've seen across interviews. So yeah, the book is there, available on like my LinkedIn, Nirmal's LinkedIn. You can check it out. And yeah, we've been getting good feedback. A few folks, including in fan companies, have been able to found the book useful and cracked the interviews.
It almost reminds me of the of our bachelor days, right? Doing the normal classes and then going for the crash courses as well, because if you didn't
Definitely.
study when the normal class was going on, so you have to study in the crash course. Awesome. I want to quickly like transition into some questions, like the four or five that
Sure.
I want to know. I don't think we've chatted and we are friendly, but I still don't know some of these things. So I wanted others to get a chance to know them with me. So these are just casual rapid fire
For sure.
ones,
For
which
sure.
is Karun, what's your favorite movie?
Ooh, I'm a sucker for movies that have a sad ending. So Marley and Me is like a quick one that comes to mind. Um, yeah, a few that maybe like a slight polar opposite. Train to Busan was a movie that I recently rewatched. Again, not an endings where maybe not everybody makes it through. Sort of stick with me more. So I'm a sucker for those kind of movies.
I would have never pegged you for that. And I am somebody who's like, okay, if I'm spending 2 hours, I'm hoping for a good ending in the end. There's a good tie to the bow. And here you are talking about being a sucker for complicated endings. Very cool. So, okay. Side note: movies that end in cliffhangers. Do you like that or do you not like that?
No, I don't like thinking that, oh, this could have happened, or maybe it might have been this, or maybe I don't want them to. I don't necessarily like movies that make me think too much. Like I'm not a huge fan of Inception. So yeah, I like. I'm not saying I like to be spoon fed, but I like a little bit more clarity, I guess.
Someone recently shared a short about Inception. Is that, and I can be butchering this completely, but if it is reality if you are in you are in the dream, or if you are in the frame. Yeah, that's what it is. If you are in the frame, then it is reality. If you're not in the frame, then it's dream. I don't know.
Okay.
Again, don't quote me on it, but that reminded me of Inception. Second one is favorite cuisine when you are going out to eat.
Oh, for me, an Indian, no question. Like I've tried everything. I always come back to Indian food. I feel like it's the most flavorful food out there. Yeah, for me, it's always Indian.
Very cool. This is an interesting one. It's a deeper one, but do you believe in God?
Uh, I would say yes, just because like um, had like maybe a few points in life where things were hard and I couldn't for whatever reason imagine a way out, and for some reason, not because of maybe like the effort I put in or because of like what anybody else did, things just fell into place. So I feel like if not God, maybe some kind of like higher design in place, some kind of fate, karma. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like things worked out pretty well, I guess.
Oh, wow. Definitely a question I'm going to ask when we meet is that, okay, well, give me an example, right? I would love to have asked that example, but I know that we are already at the 90-minute mark. So I'll end with this question. Anybody who's reading or is not reading, anybody who is watching this show, either live or a recorded version of this, give them a challenge that they can complete to get better at the topic that we've talked about today in less than 2 hours this weekend. So that's the kind of timeline of the challenge I want you to give them. Just 2 hours on this weekend to get them better at the topic that we spoke about today.
Got it. I don't know if it would be a challenge, but understanding maybe one of the playlists that we recommend. Emma Dink's playlist comes to mind immediately just because it covers like the fundamentals. That could be a good one to target for this weekend. It's going to make sure that your fundamentals in stats is solid, and that just makes you more confident about everything else.
Awesome. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for being part of the Beyond Grad Show, Karun. If anybody's watching, if you want to reach out to Karun or me, we are both active on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. This was awesome. It shows the depth of knowledge you have. I would
Thank you.
love to be on the other side of the interviewing table. If I was interviewing you, like let's say for your next internal data science role or whatever, I would love to see
For sure.
how the work that you have done behind this, what that translates into clarity of thought. And yeah, I'm looking forward to you sharing more about that. So really cool to see you produce content and with the clarity that you do. Very impressive. So thank you for being here and thank you for being a creator in this space.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me on the show. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with other creators and just, yeah, these conversations always give a little bit more, I guess, structure to my thought, and I often find myself just introspecting a few hours afterwards. And yeah, it's always nice to chat.
Awesome. I'll end the stream. Thank you guys, whoever joined us and stayed with us live on the show. Thank you.
Thank you all.